I'll be very transparent because I have done nothing. Sorry.
Silence of the public means there is an overstretch of too much power.
Príjemný dobrý večer. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to One World Film Festival 2021. Volám sa Michal Horecký. My name is Michal Horecký. And it's unusual, but I will speak English tonight with my dear guests, and I'm very happy to have them both here in person, tested and vaccinated, and so we can talk to each other. And it's a special honor to have Věra Čakániová with us, the filmmaker, Slovak documentary filmmaker, and a teacher and documentarist who made movie Frem, which was first one shot in Antarctica, and lately White on White, Biela na bielej, amazing documentary on her experiences in Antarctica, living and working at the Polish scientific base there. She will tell us more about it in person. I strongly recommend you have an option to see these movies also online on the stream of Jeden Svet or One World. And we will talk about all the details very soon. And not last but not least, we have Ilona Wiśniewska, author of a book Biele, White as well. The icy islands of Spitsbergen, as we could say, or Svalbard. She will tell us more about her new... She comes from Poland, is a reporter, a writer, non-fiction author. In Poland, she's published by the great publishing house Czarne, and from Beskiden, and here in Slovakia by Absynt, where else? Publishing house for non-fiction reporting, and the book I just finished, I can only strongly recommend to you, describing her amazing life in this very, very northern part of our continent. And this book in original language, in Polish, has two more, so to say, sequels, and somehow that's a sort of a trilogy. So we will have Ilona here with us as well, and we hope you will also ask questions over Slido. That's what you can do. So share the link, watch us, and send us questions over Slido. We will have some time at the end to answer them, hopefully. So, Věra, I will start with you, because you, in your pitch for the movie, so to say, you claim this Antarctica is something like a drug. And that's a strong expression. I was thinking a lot about it when I watched the movie. So because drugs can be, it has some positive and many negative sides, as to say it officially. Tell us about your very first experience there and how it all started, this fascination for you at that very strange location.
How it all started, or why did I call it a drug?
Both.
Well, it's a long story, so I have to think where to start. But yeah, you mentioned my film Frem, which was like another film, a previous film. that I shot in Antarctica, and I went there because of this movie. That was the main purpose. And this other film, White on White, which they show now at the festival, was some kind of a side effect of my, stay there. And from some internal reasons, I needed to talk to myself and take this drug, this Antarctic drug, and enter into my consciousness and deal with some topics that I needed to deal with by myself in there, and that's why the second film actually emerged in this extreme landscape, sort of.
I'm glad you say this, because when I was watching it, my experience from it was also that it's very personal, it's very intimate in many ways. You talk to each other, but you also chat, like you're discussing your, so to say, artificial self. In a way you could discuss it with computer, you record yourself, you try yourself in an extreme situation. So is there something fundamental you learned about yourself, or more about the landscape around you?
It's actually very hard. All these questions, I tried to answer them in the film, and I don't know if I succeeded, but to somehow deliver this sort of experience that I had in there to the viewers, but it's hard to describe it, because it was like very physical actually, and it's not possible to put everything into the movie because it's just picture and sound. But these physical sensations that you had there, and the experience with your own body, and also mind, but it's connected. So it's hard to describe. So I don't know if you see the movie, if you can imagine like what it could be like to be in this kind of landscape. But I think you can experience these sort of feelings anywhere you go into the nature, where you're isolated and just by yourself, or in some like basic situation without all this comfort that you are used to have in the civilization. And so it doesn't matter if it's Antarctica or, I don't know, some mountains, even in Slovakia, if you maybe go to High Tatras and you stay there for, I don't know, for the whole winter at some, if you would find some refuge sort of, that we stayed in Antarctica, it would maybe the same experience.
Ilona, you grew up in Poland and started your career there, and then you moved to the very, very part of Europe. You both of you basically are on the opposite sides of the world. You at the very bottom, shooting your movies in Antarctica. You living in one of the most northern part of Europe. And tell us about you wrote a book about it. So it's some sort of a series of short pieces on the people you meet, on the experience you made, on your lifestyle there, on your work, and trying to become a writing experience with the writing. Tell us about the decision that I want to rework my experience there into a book, into a non-fiction.
The thing is that I've never been written anything like long text before I went there. I was living in Wrocław. This is a big city in Poland. I was not very satisfied with my life. So then the first thing was to take a decision to go to the northernmost point of the world where you can go by plane, and that was Spitsbergen. And I went there when I was 27. I was not satisfied with my life, and then then that was the decision. Okay, let's change the life. And you know, in Poland we always say that we should just leave everything and go to some warm islands. But I went to this very cold island, and then it's not so easy that you can just sleep on this beach, that you can just meet people all around because they are inside. It's so cold. So I went to the northernmost point community in the world, which name is Longyearbyen, and this was like to land on a different planet, but people were the same, or actually they were nicer than anywhere else I met, because it was the community that there were around 50 nations or nationalities. And they were living
50, yeah,
50.
Yeah.
And it was changing all the time because people are coming and going. And then suddenly I realized that there is a community with people who respect each other. They respect their way of seeing things, their religions, their view on things. And they are living in this little town on the top of the globe. So this is like a subject or like a theme to write. And then I started to write articles for Polityka. This is the biggest weekly magazine in Poland. And then I thought that it's not interesting to write about myself. It's interesting to write about the people I meet, because people were from many countries. Everybody had like a story on their back, because you are not coming there just to, I don't know, when everything is okay in your life, you are probably not coming and staying there. You're coming there for holidays. But if you have something on your back, that this is a place for you, but at the same time, you have something in common. So it was very easy to get to know each other. So this was like a dream situation for me, because nobody ever wrote a book about community in Longyearbyen and in this on this island. It was not even written in Norwegian. The island is Norwegian, but it was not written in Norwegian. So then I just collected all these people at this time, and they were my friends. Most of the people here in the book, they are my friends, or very good friends.
You know, when I was reading the book, I started to Google it, and I checked the YouTube because I wanted to see the locations you are describing. We should maybe mention that the capital, you are the capital, so to say, it's about 2,500 people. It's like a rather small village.
2,000 and 400 in one other town.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a very small community. But on the other hand, there are, I think, over 1 million tourists coming every year. So there are heavy paradoxes, and some of it is very funny as well to read about, but also there are hardly any regions that hardly dealing with the climate change as well. It's becoming a very tough issue for Spitsbergen. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea that Czechoslovakia actually was making claims on Franz Josef Insel.
Okay.
Even further to the north,
yes,
because it was Austrian-Hungarian, and part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was dedicated to Kaiser Joseph, Franz Josef, and after the First World War, people didn't know where it should belong, and there was also idea, some Czechoslovaks were claiming it should be ours. Unfortunately or luckily, this never happened, but we have some ambassadors like you are, what really struck me is that on this strange location belonging to Norway, there was also a Cold War going on. For you from Poland, for us from Czechoslovakia, this was surely an issue, because the Soviets and the West, and you could emigrate. Tell us a little bit about these historical perspectives, which are quite striking for somebody from here.
Yeah, like Spitsbergen is the biggest island of archipelago Svalbard, and it belongs to Norway, but it was like a Svalbard Treaty signed in 1921 that tells that Norway has sovereignty over the island, but all countries that signed the treaty, they can come there, they can do some science, and they can get resources. and just be there. So, of course, Russians came there in the Cold War because it was like very important for them to put their flag there as well. It is, when you see on the map, Svalbard or Spitsbergen is very important on the route, like the northern route. Yeah. And especially now when the ice is melting, right? So these new ways are opening. So it was like a paradox in this way that there was Norwegian community based on coal mining and also coal mining town which was built by Russians and Ukrainians. So they didn't have any border. They could just Norwegians could just come to these Russian parts sometimes, and Russians often use this opportunity to go to this Norway and then to just run through this Norwegian town.
To escape the Eastern Bloc.
And Norwegian governor was helping them, and that's why there were like frictions on the line Russia. Norway. And then we have Polish base, like scientific station on Spitsbergen. And it was also a very good opportunity for Polish scientists to run from Poland through Svalbard to better life in Norway.
Long way,
yes,
long way short. Yeah,
it happened especially in 1981 and until 1983 when it was really hard situation, a political situation in Poland. So even if it's the island in the end of the world, politically it's super interesting what's going on, what was going and what is going on all the time.
You have quite some strong characters in this book. People who really were fighting hard to survive, people who struggled very much to get somehow to deal with the situation there in this very cold landscape. On the other hand, you have also some sympathies for people who, for example, are tourists through these ghost towns. We should maybe mention that the end of the Soviet Empire also meant decline for regions in Spitsbergen. In the 90s, some areas became completely deserted. One of the most famous is the Pyramiden, or maybe the only bigger city is Pyramiden. Tell us about this ghost town, because it reads really like some sort of horror story which is real.
But this is a very nice horror, actually, because this is a beautiful mining town built by Swedes, actually, but then they sold it to Russians, and it was made from the best materials, from the best, and the best people were hired there, because Soviet, they wanted to show to the West that this is how we live, you know. So all the people who could come there, they were living in really very good conditions. And then the town was abandoned in 1998, and one of the reasons was a plane crash when it was 144 people died who were living in Pyramid, and that was the biggest plane crash in Norwegian history. So then they just sent all the people home. They left apartments, they left plants, they left some animals as well, and this town was just closed down for some years, and then they decide to invite tourists there, because sort of ghost towns are very popular all over the world. You can see Chernobyl, for example. It's very interesting for tourists to go there and visit. So it was the same with Pyramiden. And Pyramiden, when I was living on Svalbard, it was like abandoned town with a hotel that was, it was just as it was in 80s or 90s, and they just clean it. And tourists could come and just have a feeling of Soviet. And many people loved that. So then it was like, there were like 3 people living in this whole town. And it was beautiful, because then you can see how abandoned places are taken again by the nature. When birds are taking over, when animals are taking over, that was very beautiful. So I loved, this is one of my favorite places, and I never felt so welcome like by 3 Russians in Pyramid, and I always felt very like home. So this is like a very, very special place for this island. And now you mentioned tourism. It was, we had a lot of, just too much tourists coming to Svalbard, that everything that is there, which was like originally for people. Now it became something for tourists. So I think that pandemic was actually very good for Svalbard, because then all this mass tourism couldn't reach the island. So Pyramiden is not having any tourists now, because they can't.
It's the huge cruise ships coming.
Yes,
yeah.
and yes, cruise ships are the worst, because they are coming only for a few hours, and they are, you know everything about cruise ships, I guess, from Antarctic. So they just come for some hours. They just destroy the nature, and when they see some buildings, they always go in, even if they are private apartments. So I had many friends that just got some tourists inside the houses. They wanted to use the toilet or something, you know, and asking impossible questions and so on. You know, like people in mass, it's always very like dangerous.
Vera, tell us a bit about the community of people you are meeting there at the Polish Antarctic station and the base, the scientists who are there. In your movies, there are few people. It's mostly just you. You're interacting with.
Yeah, it's different. Than,
yeah, it's very different. You have a different approach.
Yeah, because it's a film actually about me, about my feelings and thoughts and whatever at this place. So it's very personal, and the other people are there, but. They're there as everything else, you know, in the landscape, as animals and people, icebergs, you know. For me, it's just, I don't know, something to reflect on, you know. And it was, well, it's a different situation because Svalbard, obviously, people are living there permanently, and Antarctica is not like a permanent. You know, population in there, so there are only these scientific bases, and the people fluctuate there, you know, and so we came there with a group of Polish, not even scientists, there were basically people, like maintenance guys, you know, like who went there ahead of the scientists to take care of all this machinery that they have there and like do the repairs. Because it was after winter time. The base is actually functioning the whole year. Some bases are only like for summer, for example. I'm not working the whole year, but Arctovsky is like all year round. So, and the winter starts there, I think at the end of April or something, and then until October, it's like winter time, and there are only like maybe 15 people who stay at the base to keep it run, but it's much even more harsh than I could have experienced, because in winter it's like really a lot of snow and freezing and bad weather. So they basically stay inside, and they don't have a lot of opportunities to take care of whatever breaks, or I don't know. So after this winter time, there are these people coming who fix the base actually and prepare it for the arrival of the scientists who come at the beginning of Antarctic summer, which is December till this March or something like this. So and these people, obviously, it was like most of them were actually. Like from army, I even think, like former
militaries, some
yeah,
soldiers.
like not soldiers really, but that are like in the army to make
supporting
this,
stuff,
take care of this machinery, you know, because they didn't speak like good English, you know, very basic. And so we obviously spoke Slovak, Polish, whatever, but you couldn't have like really, you know, deep conversations.
Stimulating intellectual conversation.
So that wasn't the case. And but I didn't even search for it, you know, because it was so. Well, I would have to explain like the whole setup. We stayed at the base, but as I told, I was shooting there the other film, Frame, which is from the point of view of some sort of artificial intelligence, and we shot it on drone. So we needed to be a part of the base because I needed like this landscape with no human impact. Basically, so we had an agreement with Ecuadorians, which had like a sort of refuge there across the bay, and it was basically a metal ship container with nothing inside, but we could stay there during the shooting. So like half of the time we were in Antarctica, we were in this container isolated, only like 3 of us shooting the film, but they took us there every time with these boats they call Zodiacs. It's like that's Zodiac, so they drove us there with all the stuff we needed, and they left us there, and then they took us back at some point, to relax, or because it wasn't possible to be there more than 10 days continuously. It was quite hard in the container. So half of the time we spent at the base. So it was like, for me, like this time of relax, where we could just have a proper sleep and have a shower with hot water and hot meal, and to dry all stuff and sort of. So I wasn't really, in the mood to have this sophisticated conversation about whatever. So I was, I don't know, but it was strange because even we, like 3 of us that were in this container together, we didn't talk too much, like to ourselves, like about what we experienced or about our thoughts or whatever. Somehow, like everyone was alone with his own thoughts. This was how it worked, and because the landscape. I don't know. You reflected like your mind, onto it, like on a canvas, and you talk to yourself, and you didn't have this urge, to talk to other people that much. From what the Polish people themselves, there was this like a living room or something where like where they eat, and they would have some. Like talk after dinner or watch some movie or whatever, but that would happen, but not that much actually. I don't know. It was.
I just want to remind you that you can also ask questions to Ilona Višnievská and Viera Čakaniová over Slido, #Azyl. Môžete klásť otázky aj vy, budeme sa tešiť. Viera, so how long did you all together spend time there? Weeks or months? And you planning to go back and continue with this project? Or?
6 weeks. We were there approximately, and
for every movie, for both of them, or just once like for the both?
Because this other film was that I had another camera, like a spare camera, and I was just using it as a diary camera, which I used to. It was sort of a psychohygiene, really, for me, just to go outside and talk or just film things that I don't know. I had this urge to film, like the icebergs, and because it was so beautiful, like the all that I saw, that you couldn't help yourself and just. But so it was 6 weeks because I couldn't go back. I knew I would go there just once. That was also why it was so difficult to make the first film, because you can't prepare to such experience. So we had like a quite naive expectations. A lot of them that just crashed. It wasn't possible to do. So I was quite in a lot of stress actually, because I had to make this film. I had some money, and some deadlines and whatever, and I knew that if I don't succeed to do it during this time we had, I wouldn't be able to go back and reshoot it or rethink it like differently, because I don't know. So it was quite a lot of pressure actually, and that's maybe why I started to make this other film, because it was sort of escape for me, like a relief that I was just shooting something without this extreme like weight, I mean, I didn't focus on how it looks like actually, like formally, that it's nicely, like these compositions and think about, I didn't even know I was doing this film. Like it was really, at first it was for myself, and I didn't think I would show it to people, like I would edit from it some other film. So it was really accidental actually that it happened only when I got back, and I showed it to some people, and we started to talk that, well, maybe it's interesting, and it also as a complementary film to this frame, which is from this point of view of artificial intelligence or some like totally distant, unpersonal film. So this is very personal, and it's from the point of view of a person that actually stays on the ground and, is part of this landscape, which in the first film is viewed from the, high altitude, and yeah.
Ilona, you decided to stay. You started a new life, and you became a writer there in Spitsbergen. When I read about it, I was surprised at how many things that we consider normal or like belong to our everyday life are not possible there. For example, like giving birth to a child, or even basically die to have a grave. You cannot be put into a grave anymore because of climate change, as I understood it. Is it right?
No, the thing is that mostly all of the people who are living in Longyearbyen, they are coming from somewhere, and they don't want to be buried there because they have families and they have some relatives on the mainland, as we call Norway and the other countries. So that's why. But there are some people buried, and you can still be buried there. But this is there are only few people that were buried there last year. So one mayor of Longyearbyen who spent there many years. So it was an honor for him to be buried there. But there is no tradition for that actually, because people were it was always a community in constant movement. They were coming and going, and this is like you come to Longyearbyen, you start to live there, and then the first question you ask always people you meet: where are you coming from? How long have you been staying here? And when are you leaving? These are the three questions that are always asked. So this is like this is not a place to die. Actually, of course, some people died there, and there are always like once a year there are somebody killed by polar bear or died in a snowmobile crash, whatever. There are always some kind of accidents because this is a place where you have to have really big respect for the nature, and not all of them have, since there are so many tourists as well. So this is like this is the place where you said that there are so many differences between our lives from here. But I think that the biggest change for me was that, for example, there were no sun for 4 months. You couldn't see the sun for 4 months, or for 5 months you couldn't see the moon or the night. So this is like a big change to accept. This is beautiful to experience. I guess you had the same.
It was great because for the shooting it's great because you don't have, you can shoot 24 hours. There's always light, but.
Yes. But
for the human mind, it's worse, probably.
Yeah, it's beautiful, actually. I think that I will wish everyone could experience like midnight sun and polar night. I think it's so beautiful. So these were the big changes for me. Like that the light was different, and then you have to adapt to that. It was super cold as well. So this all depends on your attitude. How you manage to live there.
So when are you leaving?
I left already. I left Svalbard.
Okay. You
yes,
left it. Okay.
I've been living there for 5 years, and that was enough. And I still miss this island, but I'm very happy that I decided not to live there, because this is super exotic place. But then you are so exotic that all the other places are so far away, and you really... it's not good for your head to be there too long. I know people who spend there like 20 years, and they should leave, actually. So
now you're in Norway?
I'm in northern Norway, in Tromsø. This is like the biggest town or city in Norwegian terms in the north. And that's just 1.5 hours with the plane to Svalbard, so it's not far.
Did you have a gun? As you say, most people should have guns living in Svalbard.
Yeah, they should have Mauser, because the
Mauser,
Germans
okay.
were there. And then they left the Mausers, and then they are still in use. So I learned how to shoot. But the thing is, what weapon is doing with you. That because the rule is that if you go outside the town, you have to have a weapon against polar bears. You can't shoot them because they are protected, but you should have a weapon to protect yourself. Okay. That's the rule. But the rule is one thing, but the other thing is how a person with a weapon will behave. Because weapon does something with you, because if you don't have experience in the field, then you don't know how to react. You don't know what polar bear is doing. This I've heard from people who have a lot of experience with polar bears. So you don't know if he approaches you, is that he wants to kill you, or he is just passing by. And then you have to decide what you do. So, to have a weapon is one thing. But to use it like in
properly,
reasonable way, that's the other
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I always preferred actually to go to the field when it was like longer trips, to go with somebody who has experience,
Mm-hmm.
because then I will never put me in a situation that I killed a polar bear, because I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
They have already a very hard life, so I didn't want to be a part of that. So this is the weapons situation, that people are using weapon, but hopefully they don't have to they don't have to shoot.
I heard there are more polar bears than people. Still,
we hope.
we hope so.
We hope so, but Svalbard is also the population increases in last years. So maybe now they are more or less the same, because polar bears are also dying.
It's not so much topic of your book, but the climate change happening there is very intense, and some people say it's the fastest island getting warmer that we measure in Europe. So. Did you experience it, seeing the glaciers melting? Did you in these 5 years? It's quite a long time already. Did you have there are avalanches which are very dangerous for the small town and so on. So how was your experience with this?
Yeah, my experience was only these 5 years, but I've been traveling there since 12 years. So I can see, for example, that these avalanches, as you mentioned, then they started to come to this town. A few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, it was like a big avalanche that took a life of 2 people living there. And for this small community, it was a big tragedy. So avalanches is something new. Then like ice on the sea, it comes later than it used to come, and some of the fjords that always had ice, they doesn't have ice anymore, and this is like opinion of people who are traveling to Svalbard since like 30 years, because they can see these big changes. So one of my friends, she's not in the book, but she is a journalist there. She wrote a book last year, and the title is My World is Melting. She has been living there for 15 years already, and she writes how is it to experience these global changes on her own like skin, because she is there all the time and she follows the thing. She talked to scientists, she talked to people who experience that. So of course there are the ice like glaciers, they are calving all the time, but they are just moving much quicker now. So I'm not an expert at all. I could see on my own eyes, I saw that it was much warmer, and then the ice didn't come as it should. And that was in this 10, 12 years.
We also have the first question from Slido. Thanks for that, and we are waiting for more of them. People say it's very depressing to spend most time of the year in the darkness and in the cold, meaning locked inside. How did you two handle it? So, Vera, you can...
Well, actually, I didn't spend the time in the dark, because I went there when it was like a polar
only
day.
light, yeah.
So,
but it can be also tiring.
It was also strange to adapt in a way, because... but I don't know, it wasn't such an issue for me, actually, because the more of a problem was when the weather was bad, like a lot of wind, like there were like really strong winds in these South Shetland Islands, and And you just wasn't able to go outside and do anything. So it didn't matter if it was like dark or light, you know, because you could just stay inside. And actually, when we were in the container, there was like really a very small window that was all. So you're basically in this metal, you know,
it's also
thing.
in the movie. It's in the movie. You can,
You're in this metal cage anyway. So whether it's dark or light, I don't know. We were actually working there, you know, because we had to shoot and deal with a lot of logistic problems and so on, and take care of ourselves. And it was so exhausting. So we were like really exhausted, and so we slept like maybe, I don't know, 10 days, like every day, and didn't matter that it was light outside because we were just so tired, you know. And it was also in the container, it was also the only way how to get warm, you know, because there was no heating, nothing. So we only had these sleeping bags. So it was the only way when you crawl into the sleeping bag to, you know, like relax and be warm. So,
okay. Ilona?
We used to say on Spitsbergen that if you make darkness to a problem, it's going to be a problem. So attitude is the most important thing when you live in 4 months of the darkness, because of course it's hard. It's like, but it's a part of the year. It's a part of a cyclus. In the beginning, we are very happy that the night is coming because we are exhausted after all these months with the sun. This is very exhausting, actually, when you don't have the night, when you can't sleep properly. You can, of course, cover the windows and so on, but still you are on some kind of alert all the time. You can't relax. And then the dark season is coming, and then you actually relax too much, because then you have like, you are really
you have to adapt and be like the bears, you know, that sleep during the whole winter, like just hibernate.
Yeah. And people from the north, they tell me one thing. They say, Ilona, people from your like area, from the south, they think that in the polar night you can still live as you've been living before, with the same speed. So just slow down and you will see. So it's to slow down and just adapt to the darkness. It's very important to go to the darkness slowly, like not to jump from our climate there. I did it once. I will never recommend that. But when it's a process, then you notice that. You notice that the days are shorter and that you suddenly don't see the light, okay? But you see some. You don't see the sun, but you see some light, and it's also process. It's not happening like from one day to another that suddenly this light is switched off. So this is like it is tiring, but of course it's like. Everyone are in the same situation. So in these areas behind the polar circle, people are always very focused on doing things in the dark period. That you go out. We arrange a lot of festivals. We go out. We don't want to be locked in the houses. That's very important. So then you just deal with it, and it can be amazing and it can be so beautiful when you see the moon that is all the time on the sky, when you see northern lights that are just dancing over your head, and you just think it is really beautiful, you know. The question was also about the coldness. It's different coldness than here, because here is very high level of humidity, and there is completely dry. So you are getting colder in a different way. Not that. Not.
Yeah, well, actually, in Antarctica, it was this. Humid cold, which surprised me because it's actually islands. I believe that maybe in Antarctic continent, if you go, there is this dry cold, but these were islands, so it was quite a lot of humidity, and the container we stayed in was like covered by mold. So this was very unpleasant actually for me. Because you couldn't dry the clothes, you were still wet and cold, you know. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, watching the movies, I was always wondering if this sort of a strange claustrophobic feeling the person you have, especially in white on white, biela na bielej, where you're talking to yourself about your conditions, and you're coping with the weather and with the living situation. Was it something that you brought partly from back home, or was it something that you somehow developed during these 6 weeks there, or these few days there, and or is it something permanent, maybe in some sort of state of mind you have, and you were sort of trying to reflect it?
I wish I would keep this Zen state of mind forever, but but then you go back to the civilization and all this noise, you know, and like these stupid tasks that you have to fulfill, and you lose it very quickly, actually, and that's very frustrating.
And maybe
but I still remember it, and it's good that I was able to experience it, and you can. At least you know you can do it. That you can like enter into this state of like peaceful sort of a Zen, you know, that you're able to do it, but you just somehow need to have this attitude and you know put yourself into a situation where it can happen, you know.
And maybe connected with this is the next question I have. That is how you come to this idea that I want to shoot a movie in Antarctica in the first place, because it's not. I don't think it's like a common issue in a Slovak documentary.
We don't have time.
Well, just try to put it, you know, as short as possible. Was it something you had in mind for a long time?
Actually, not really. It was also a lot of accidents and things that happened, and this was the outcome that when I was developing this film frame, which is about artificial intelligence, but there were also at the beginning it was more complex project with different other topics, basically dealing with how we as people are trying to cross some biological and physiological limits we have as species through technological means. For example, artificial intelligence, but also genetic engineering and stuff like that. And during this research, I met accidentally a guy, a Czech man who made his own Antarctic base, which is a pretty crazy situation, but that's what Czech people do. I don't know how it happened, but there is a small island called Nelson. It's actually next to this King's George Island where all these regular scientific bases are. And he went there. It was during the communism in the 80s. I don't know how he got there, but he built sort of his own personal base with some like debris, like stuff he collected, like waste from the ocean and other things he dragged there. But it was like really small wooden houses, and he put people there into these extreme conditions as like his sort of guinea pigs, and and he was doing experiments of this kind, you know, that he would take people there and left them there like in Antarctica with nothing, and so some of them will write books about what they experienced or took pictures or whatever. It was quite a lot of people who actually went to this base of his name was Jaroslav Pavlíček. He's still alive, and
you should make a movie about him. The next year.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted at the beginning.
I see your third project already.
Yeah. That was actually the idea at the beginning, because I thought it would be a part of this film when someone would actually undergo this sort of experiment, you know, like some person that would go there. And I didn't know at the time that person would actually be me.
Okay.
But then it all changed.
You have Nelson. It's a great title. You have Mr. Pavlíček. You have everything you need. You have location and character.
It wasn't possible because he was. His idea was. That he would get us there by hitchhiking some boats from Ushuaia or something from Argentina. That's how he did it. But it wasn't possible, you know, with all these shooting deadlines and whatever. I just needed to get there at some point and like be sure that it will happen. And
Hitchhiking
he wasn't
to Antarctica.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Okay.
But so he wasn't able to do it for us. So then we started to communicate with, like, search other options, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the other options was this Polish base because they were quite large, and so they will be able to accept 3 more people, because that was quite. Actually difficult, you know, because they most of the other bases, for example, Czechs also have like a regular base, but it's more south, and it's more complicated to get there because you have to have the helicopter. You have to go there by helicopter, and it was only for I don't know 5 months or 6 months we would have to be there because it wasn't able. They weren't able to get us from there after. I don't know, 1 month or 2 months. Yeah. So we would have to go there for the whole period. And so it was, so finally we somehow had this agreement with Polish people, and that's how it happened that I went there. And
but I noticed some deep fascination in your personality already for this part of the world. So I do believe that there is going to be some continuation. We are running out of time, but I still have one question to Ilona, and that's, you know, your book begins and ends with this really awesome woman called Galina. And when I started to read it, her story, I just thought like. If I would come to any publisher and tell him this story, he would say, this is too invented, this cannot be simply true, nobody will believe it, but it's a real story, and it's so tell us a bit about this Galina, and I think she's still alive. She's still alive in Russia,
In eastern Ukraine.
In eastern Ukraine,
yes, okay. I hope so. Galina was a woman I've heard a radio documentary in Norwegian radio about. She was a Ukrainian woman working on a big cruise ship. At this time it was big, Maxim Gorky. That was a cruise ship that came to Svalbard, and she just jumped off the boat. Like it was big boat, so she jumped to the sea, and she swam to the shore, and then she found one of the wooden houses there, and she was staying there for some days, and without any food, without anything, she just survived, and it was quite a long distance. She had to swim, so her feet were sort of she didn't get frostbites, but she was very like she got a lot of coldness in her body. So then somebody found her from Longyearbyen, and they took her to the hospital. And then even a Russian consul visited her there, because everybody thought that she wanted to
escape. She
wanted her better life. She wanted to be one of those who just ran to Norway. And then she said no, she wanted to go back to her mother, and she wanted to go back home. And she just disappeared. And that was just a little note in a Norwegian newspaper that the author of the radio program read, and he found the woman. He went to Ukraine, and he found the woman, and that's why I've heard about this story. And then so the question was why she came back, why she didn't want to have better life. So this is like a frame of the book, because nobody knew actually what
it's
was
a mystery.
it was a mystery. And then I also got a picture from this author of the radio program. He gave me a picture, and he said, okay, she's living in Nikopol in eastern Ukraine, so you can just go. And he gave me just a picture of the street where she was probably in this area she was living. And I came to this Nikopol, and all the streets were the same. All the streets looked like on this picture. But then it was some details. I was just going with this picture and asking people where it can be. And one of the old ladies, she told me, maybe you can go there. And I went to some of the blocks that were there, and there was a woman in the window, and I asked, and she asked me, okay, a što ty dzieweczka, or something like that, she asked me. And I said that I'm looking for Galina, and then she said, that's me. And then she invited me home, so I spent some hours with her. I realized that she was mental, sort of disabled at this time. But that was a very special meeting with her. She left. She was living with her mother, with her daughter as well. But her life was quite miserable. It was not, and she was not a happy person. I hope she's still in good shape. She was sick at this time, and so on. She was. She didn't sort of. I didn't meet a nice, she was nice, but she was not a happy person. So this is like a frame for the book, you know, that...
It's quite a story.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions. Please keep the answers short as if possible. Viera, for you, please, can you tell us more about your experience with artificial intelligence? Did this confrontation change your views of our future? Well, that could be a speech for
exactly.
TEDx conference.
I don't actually know what the viewer means by experience with AI. If he means or she means the dialogue that is in the film, because there is sort of a dialogue that I perform with AI, and actually it's a dialogue that was written by me. As I was thinking about these topics, I did quite a lot of research with all sorts of artificial neural networks and like trying to have conversations with different chatbots and so on. So that's how I got this idea that there could be some sort of I needed something to, you know, like opposition to my like human, very emotional, sentimental experience, and so I needed some other, totally different, rational, you know, distant way of thinking about what is life about, or why we live, even, you know. So that's why I put it there, and
there is some slight change.
Yeah,
seems like. Okay. Next question would be. Don't people need some amount of sunlight for normal functioning, like vitamin D, or at last being outside for some fresh air seems unimaginable? Ilona, will you try? It seems like you survived well the conditions, but how is it? I know Norway is very well known for supporting people with vitamin D, for example, in the wintertime.
Yeah, in wintertime, people also are using this lamp that gives the temperature of the light, of the daily light. So they can use that. I was using that on Svalbard, but then it didn't work. I prefer to be in the darkness. It's just that of course it's hard for your body, but people can also travel, or they couldn't travel last year, but normally they can travel, so they can see the sun, and they just focus on other things. It's not like there's like a high rate of suicides or that's in the north because of the lack of sun. It's not. People on Svalbard, there are people who are spending polar night. They want to do that. It's just that nobody is forced to stay on Svalbard in the dark season. And in the northern Norway, there are people in generations living there, so for them it's just normal. So it's not a problem.
The main question is, living beyond the Arctic Circle a temporary experience, or is it possible to live there all your life? Well, you will live there 5 years.
Yes, and I've been living behind the polar circle since 12 years now. And I will say that I will not call it my only home, because Poland is still my home, as long as it will be ruled by some better politicians, but this is another topic. But of course you can live there for all your life, because it's a very good life. You know, there are not so many things going on. We don't have, as you said, about going back and going to stupid tasks and so on, right? Yeah. So there are so few things that are going on there that if you adapt to this life, you can't imagine living differently. You can't imagine to come back to your previous life, or at least I can't. My life is so well organized that I'm a writer, so I can travel a lot with my writings, and at the same time having my base in the north. So this is very important for me, to have this base, to have the clean air, to have the few people around, and to have this silence.
And please tell us, what are the next 2 books about, which genre is, it looks like they are sort of trilogy.
Yes, they call it trilogy, but it was never meant to be a trilogy. The second book is about the northernmost Norway,
Okay.
and the third book is about one of the Greenlandic islands. And I just finished third book, which is about the northernmost community in Greenland. There are only 37 people living.
Okay.
So I just stick to this.
And did you ever write about Poland as well? Or maybe for the Norwegians in the new home, or are they interested?
No, they are not interested in Polish. Even if we are, even if we are the biggest minority in this land, they are not interested in our literature, in our culture. They are interested in our workers. And they are open about it. So it's just a known case. I'm writing sometimes articles to Norwegian weekly magazine, which is also very nice. Training for me with the language, but I write mostly about northern Norway because Norwegians from the south, from Oslo, they don't know anything about the north part of their country. So then
why would they be interested in Polish people if they're not interested in their own people living like a few hundred kilometers away?
So you are now Norwegian citizen, or are you still Polish?
I'm Polish.
You're still
yes.
Polish.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a shame to be a Polish citizen, but still, yes.
Viera Čakaniová, the obvious last question. So, what's your next film project? Or are you now occupied with teaching young documentary students?
Actually, not really. I quit teaching for a while, and I have to finish another film that is still connected with these two that I made, but it doesn't take part in Antarctica anymore. But I mean, in terms of topics, so it also deals with artificial intelligence, but in some other way, and it's totally different. Like it's on 16 millimeter and 9 millimeter film, but so I have to finish this. That's what I'm doing now.
Thank you very much, Viera Čakaniová, Ilona Višňevská, ďakujem bardzo. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Vďaka vám za otázky, ktoré ste posielali cez slajdov. Sledujte ďalej festival Jeden svet, zostaňme v kontakte a tu v A4 o 19:00 sa začína úžasný ďalší film, takže tešíme sa na vás a dovidenia. Thank you so much.
Dovidenia. Goodbye.
Ďakujeme. Ďakujeme.
Táto krajina je droga. Čistá, koncentrovaná, monochromatická droga. Niekedy ani nevidím, čo točím, pretože displej je čierny. Točím, lebo je to nejaký program dňa. Spôsob, akým urýchľujem disipáciu slnečnej energie. Mám pocit, že za chvíľu odletím aj s tou búdou. Neviem, ako zaspím v tomto vetre. Snívalo sa mi, že som fosília nejakej rastliny, ktorá existovala pred miliónmi rokov a teraz čaká zamrznutá v ľade na nový život. Tučniaci, túlenie, ľadovce v rôznom osvetlení. Keďže oni nemôžu vyslať vlastné správy, mám pocit, že ako hmota s vedomím mám voči nim túto povinnosť. Nepamätám si, že by som niekedy cítila taký pokoj. Na tomto mieste stačí proste len byť nažive.